Hey everyone, it's Kate with Maritime Ceramics. I am here with another glaze review for you. Today I'm going to be testing Spectrum Glaze's Orchid, and it is a semi-transparent glaze. That's what Spectrum calls it. I think of it as basically a celadon. So very similar to Mayco's celadon line. I have used, I think, just one of Spectrum's semi-transparent glazes, cerulean, which is a lovely light blue. I do find with the cerulean that I need sometimes 4 coats to get the color because it's a really, really light color. I don't know if this one is going to be the same, but that's what we're here to find out, right? It's been a while since I've posted a video. Usually I have a much more consistent posting schedule than this, but I have been dealing with some health stuff, so just trying to make some time to prioritize my health and doing the YouTube when I feel up to it, and just really making a point not to stress myself out. I'm not really a resolution person, but if I were, that would be my resolution for 2026. Online, it looks like kind of a pinky purple, but leaning towards the pink end of that spectrum, if that makes sense. It's a bit of a different color for me, so I shouldn't say that. It's not a different color for me. I keep saying that I don't do pinks, but like I'm sitting here with an example of me lying about that. I have a number of pink glazes, so I don't know why I think I don't like them, but we're gonna give this one a try and we'll see if it's one I wanna add into regular rotation. When I'm brushing on glazes, one of the things that I really struggle with, and I know I'm not alone in this, is keeping track of what I've done and what I haven't. I have read a whole bunch of different ways to kind of do this. Some people use dice to keep track. I feel like I need more information. So I'm trying out this new system. I'm going to put on it what I plan to do and then keep track of what I've actually done. First off, for Orchid, I'm not going to do a red clay tester. I usually do, but I'm not going to this time. And that's just because the semi-transparent glazes really just don't look great on darker clays. The color of the clay kind of takes over the color of the glaze, and I mean, really, you might as well just use clear. The celadon-style glazes like this one do usually look great over texture. That's actually why I love them. And this little bowl is, I think, a perfect tester for that. I'm going to do 3 coats of Orchid and then dip it in Coyote's Amethyst glaze. Using this test tile to see the difference between 3 coats and 4 coats, to check the transparency over underglaze, and to see what it looks like with Laguna Power Turquoise. So this tiny test tile is doing a lot of heavy lifting. The small vase is going to have 4 coats of Orchid, which will give us a good idea if 4 coats is too much. The texture on this is actually made with an oyster shell. I do that when I'm throwing it, just right at the end. It's quite subtle, so it's actually possible the 4 coats will obscure the texture altogether, so we'll see. I'm also going to add Mayco's Rose Quartz dipped on the rim, because I'm thinking that the 2 pinks might look quite pretty together, but I'm not sure if this Spectrum glaze will encourage the rose quartz to run or not. Oh, one other thing about the testers. Usually Spectrum glazes only need 2 coats, but my experience with cerulean was that it needs double that. So all of these testers are 3 or 4 coats. I'm not doing any with 2 coats. All right, let's get glazing. So with semi-transparent glazes, it's important to brush each coat in a different direction. That can be challenging over some textures like this one. One of the biggest problems with this style of glaze is that they can actually end up really blotchy. That translucency means there's nowhere to hide, right? So if you put more glaze on one section and less on another, it's going to be really obvious. I'm going to use Mayco's designer liner on the test tile. This is going to help remind me which side has 3 coats and which side has 4 coats in case they look really similar. And it's also going to help test what the glaze looks like over underglaze and how much of the underglaze you can see through it. Please excuse my penmanship. I have never quite gotten the hang of writing with this bottle. If you have tips, let me know down in the comments. I am all ears. Glazing inside pots with narrow tops, like these vases, it's always a challenge. Really, the only thing you can do is pour the glaze in. Oof. Brushing glazes allows for a lot of creativity in terms of how the glaze is applied. It does take forever. I ran out of daylight yesterday, so I'm back to finish these this morning. The cats are not impressed. They would much prefer it if I would go and sit down so that they could sit on my lap. The good news is that my post-it note system is working really well to help me keep track of where I am with the layers. Especially leaving overnight and then coming back to these, I 100% would have thought to myself, oh, I'm going to remember where I'm at. And then I would not have, and then I would have had to look at the video that I took yesterday. And anyway, this is much better. Powder turquoise and amethyst, I have both of these as dipping glazes. It's great when I'm doing a bunch of pots. It's nice and quick, but it is kind of annoying when I'm just doing one. It is generally a more cost-effective way to glaze. Despite the cat's careful supervision, I managed to get powder turquoise on the post-it note for this test tile. Luckily, this is the last step for this test tile, so I'm done keeping track of that anyway. Oh, I've mentioned in my Coyote glaze reviews that I've had bad experiences with hard panning. Hard panning is when all of the minerals in the glaze kind of fall out of the suspension, and so the water separates from them, and then you get this hard cake at the bottom of the tub, and you gotta dig it up and reblend it, and it's a pain in the butt. I am very happy to report that this batch of amethyst glaze, the dipping version, does not have that issue. It stays suspended beautifully. I did add too much water to it, so I am dipping for longer than I normally would. Sometimes I even do a second dip once the first one's dry. I was going to brush the rose quartz on, but I'm not going to lie. I'm getting kind of tired of brushing glazes right now. I'm just going to go ahead and dip this. Again, you can get away with this with most brushing glazes, but your mileage may vary. Please, please, please test. Okay, everything's done. Let's review what we're putting into the kiln. First, we've got the test tile underneath that splatter of glaze. This tells us that we have 3 layers on one side, 4 on the other side, and a dip of Laguna Power Turquoise. The bowl has 3 layers of orchid and a dip of amethyst. And the vase has 4 layers of orchid on the outside and a poured interior, plus that dip of Mayco's rose quartz that I just did. Okay, so this is interesting and a really good example of why you cannot trust colors that you see on a monitor, even if yours has been color calibrated. So this is orchid with the rose quartz on top. This is the one that we dipped. And you can see here that, well, I said orchid looked kind of pink on the computer and kind of everywhere else I've seen it actually. It looks quite purple in person. That's not a bad thing. I like purple. This is a very lavender color, I would call it, in person. And so we do see that the rose quartz has run. It hasn't run a whole lot. It's done this kind of interesting thing where, oh, you can see like the little rivulets as it ran down over the orchid. Anyway, this is quite pretty. I don't know that I would do this in my color palette in terms of what I sell, but this is super pretty. And it's kind of an interesting contrast because the rose quartz has gone almost a satin color. Sorry, not color, sheen. And the semi-transparent glaze, this orchid glaze from Spectrum has stayed quite shiny. So it's a really nice contrast. I quite like that. This is the one that I saw when I first opened the kiln. And I probably should have filmed the kiln opening because I lifted the lid and I looked and I went, huh, because it wasn't what I expected. Again, it was this purple color in the middle. I was expecting, you know, something that was pink, and this is quite a pretty purple color. So it shows the texture nicely, as I would expect from something that is a semi-transparent glaze, that is a celadon-style glaze. So nice to confirm that. I think it looks quite pretty with the amethyst on top. There were a couple of drips. I don't know if you remember when I glazed it, but that hasn't run in the firing. That's just my application. I quite like this color over the texture, and I don't see any pinholes. I don't see any blisters. It's a really nice, smooth surface, except there's a little bit of kind of orange peeling where the amethyst is over top of it. And then this is just amethyst on the outside. And actually this, a little bit of a pinhole there. It's unusual. Blister, sorry, that's not a pinhole. This amethyst glaze still is not at the specific gravity that I want it to be at. It's still more blue, and when it goes on thicker, you get more of the pinks in there, and you get a little bit more variation in the glaze. So, and actually I will show you, this is clay that's being made by New Ceramics here in Fredericton. And this is also the amethyst glaze, and I dipped this, I think, 3 times. I was planning to dip it twice anyway, but then I didn't like the way it looked at the bottom with 2 dips. But you can see this is 1 dip here, and it's not what it needs to be. This here is more what I expect to see from the amethyst glaze. I should note that all of the white clay examples are porcelain. That just happens to be what I've got at the moment. We did this one, and I labeled it so that we could see if the text came through, and kind of, I guess. I'm not sure that this would be one I would pick if I really wanted to see the details on a piece with underglaze, but it does come through a little bit. So 4 coats and 3 coats, and you do see on the 4 coat side that it is a more opaque color, I guess. It's more translucent over here on the 3. And the Laguna Pyro Turquoise, you know, looks kind of neat with it. It's a little, maybe a little Eastery, and it did run, which is good to know. So this semi-transparent glaze is allowing some running. These 2 were at the top of the kiln, and the top of my kiln got super, super hot in this firing. So it was, I would say, a cone 7. So I would take these as cone 7 results. This was at the bottom of the kiln, which was almost a perfect cone 6. So, you know, it doesn't change much between cone 6 and a cone 7. So that's good to know as well. Now, off screen, I also did a little bonus test tile. And this is Spectrum's Orchid on the bottom, and I brushed 3 times. I poured the interior of it, which worked really nicely. And this is Spectrum's Sangria on the outside. So again, because I was expecting this to be more pink, I kind of paired it with some of these pinky colors to see what happened. Not sure I really love either of these, but it just depends what you're after. This, in terms of performance, it performed well. There's no blisters, no pinholes, none of that stuff. There's lots of variation here on section that has the sangria on it. So it works really well together. I don't think is a color combo that I'm probably going to put into rotation. This is Orchid with the pearl white on top of it. Again, very consistent color. This is lighter. So I'm going to guess that it was less coats. Again, this was at the bottom of the kiln, so this was fired to a cone 6, but there is a big difference here between these 2. I will say that I think the Orchid could look really, really pretty with pearl white on top. These 2 go together really nicely. Pearl white is doing this kind of warm brown. It's almost like a toastiness at the edge of the pearl white. Anyway, it's quite pretty. So Spectrum's Orchid Glaze, I think, has performed really well. The color is just down to personal preference, so, you do you, whether you like the color or not. But in terms of the performance of the glaze itself, it's very smooth, it's very even. We put it on some difficult pieces here, actually. Getting an even glaze on texture like this is really, really tough. And the Orchid Glaze performed really well. It melted just enough to even out that application. So I'm not seeing too much in the way of splotchiness. You do see a little bit on the test tiles, but I mean, even there, that's probably application, right? Because this is a hard edge, you just kind of get a little more glaze on the side. The cloud cup is a little splotchy, I suppose. But not really. It almost looks like I might have missed a layer over here, which is entirely possible. So overall, I'm pleased with the performance of this. In terms of a celadon-style glaze, I would definitely bring this into my studio and feel pretty secure with using it. I'm curious to know, have you tried these Spectrum semi-transparent glazes? Do you like them? Do you hate them? And what do you think of this color? Let me know down in the comments.